Hi, I'm Reverend Kathryn Nelson. I was the senior pastor, lead pastor of Peace United Church of Christ from 1991 until January of 2021, so almost 30 years. So I came in August of 1991 after having been an associate pastor for 6 years, 3 years in New Brighton and 3 years in St. Paul, really working with youth a ton down there. And then an associate conference minister said, you need to be a solo pastor, and so unless you're going to stay tracked as an associate, apply for some senior positions. And so Tim and I talked, and Duluth came open. He was currently a police officer in Minnetonka, and the one place he thought he could live was Duluth. So I threw my hat in the ring, and it happened, which is kind of amazing. I think there were a lot of people rooting for me. I remember Peggy Maskey always saying, it was Trudy Schwert and I that got you the job. She's like, everyone else thought you were too young, but they hung in there, voted for me. I think it also helped that I had all that youth experience, because 7 of the 9 folks had kids that were about to enter high school in confirmation, and that was a strong, I'd done lots of youth work, mission trips, canoe trips, confirmation, and so I think that was a pretty big selling point. So I was feeling really glad to be called to this community. Tim continued to work in Minnetonka. It took him 1.5 years to find work here in Duluth. He lived with my mom. So I'll always give thanks for Tim for his adaptability, his flexibility. But we knew we wanted to be in Duluth, and it was an amazing journey for us. The church, I remember when I came, averaged way less than 90, I think, on a Sunday, and its budget was under $100,000 with a $10,000 deficit. So I was like, okay, here we go. But over the years, I always say I've served in the same place, but at least 3 different congregations, because the congregation has changed and morphed and grown over that time. Even the space has changed so much. It's such a beautiful space. When I came, it was adequate, but it's become gorgeous and accessible, which I think is really a key word for us as a congregation: accessibility, openness. And we created a space that's fully accessible to all our people, and I give thanks for so many people who worked on that.
Were there any particular memories over those 30 years that stand out to you?
Oh, so many. I think there's so much activism. I always used to joke, there go my people. I'm trying to keep up. Because this church has always been committed to issues of social justice. The Gabriel Project grew out of a need in the Central Hillside, East Hillside, because the same churches were seeing the same people. And Emily Larson was a social worker back then for Chum. And so 5 congregations, St. Mark's AME, Gloria Dei, Trinity Lutheran, us, worked together to form this fund that then Emily could manage to meet the needs that weren't being met with bus tickets, different things. We called it Gabriel Fund. Behold, we bring you good news of great joy. But her son had just been born, and he was Gabe, so that was part of the name too. So just meeting basic needs, which then kind of ended it up at Peace Church, and so a lot of traffic in and out of the building, meeting basic needs, which I think was important. But also the work on systemic needs, the Dismantling Racism team, decades of work, Aztec circles. I think really helpful that community action circles of support met in our building for their monthly or every couple months meeting. And so there were lots of people, low-income people, people of color in our building. They set up a partnership program. So people were partnered with middle-income families to learn how to meet each other and help each other, and grow together. And so that was a super great program through community action. And through that, many of us became more aware of the work of community action and Xavier Bell and others. Our partnership with St. Mark's AME and Arthur Foy, Reverend Foy was a good friend. Our daughters went to school together. When he died tragically in a car accident, we established with St. Mark's AME the Arthur Foy Scholarship Fund, which is ongoing. I think this is its 15th year of doing scholarships. The Opening Our Doors events for GLBT folks. I've been doing Holy Unions for over almost 27 years, I think. And so this community's always been open to GLBTQ folks and have a large percentage in our congregation, and never batted an eye. But that's part of the long history of this church, of always being welcoming to people and open. And so I always felt like that was an important ministry of this congregation, doing weddings for everyone. And we've done a lot of weddings. Janelle has been witnessing some of our walk-in weddings even, and not that we did that often, but we had a person come in who was being shipped out for active duty, and they wanted to get married, and so we did, and right in the sanctuary here. So just that place of welcome where people know they could come, and even if we couldn't help, they could get a cup of coffee and someone would listen. But also the advocacy work is critical importance to this congregation. I think of that. Along with that, just the pastoral care that so many people have done, the Befriender program, just so many people have provided care and meals to people in crisis over the years. So it's not just my work or the pastoral work of pastoral care, but so many people do that. The funerals, we've done funerals here for so many people, whether they were members of our congregation or not, over 300 funerals in my time. And I always feel like listening at those moments, I'd always go to people's homes and hope and kind of suggest that we meet over a meal, because then they could share pictures and stories, and it wasn't, I was in and out. It would be many hours where I'd gather those stories and then figure out how we tell the story of that person's life and celebrate them as they go home. And there's been powerful going home services that have been part of this congregation. I think Steve Chadwick, who wasn't part of this church, Fran Skinner, just all these community members, because people felt safe coming here into this space. Xavier Bell, just so many people's services were celebrated here, because it's a community center. This place really functioned like a community center. Baptisms, I did more baptisms than weddings or funerals, so I feel really good about that. We had a lot of babies. I love kids, and so children have always been a critical emphasis of this congregation. So many children, faith and formation ministers over the years, 5 of whom went on to be ordained, but just great people, amazing people in those positions, as we've done youth trips, over 25 work camps to all over San Antonio, back when we could actually cross the border and go into Mexico and learn about the crossing of the border. Denver, Chicago, Atlanta. We went to the Cheyenne Reservation many times. West Virginia, and really realized the opioid epidemic and the impact on mining communities. And then when the opioids were pulled out, methamphetamine infected, our kids learned about those systemic causes of poverty, and I think it was transformative for many kids, including my own. I look at my own kids. One is a kindergarten teacher, one is in PA school doing her clinical work, wants to be in primary care in low-income neighborhoods. So I think just those are our kids, my kids, but I know other kids made life choices based on what they learned on those trips. So there's so many levels of work that we've done as a congregation. I do think this congregation, Micah 6:8, do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. I've often heard it said that a pastor's role is to stand in the wings and help people remember their lines. And I think those lines are to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly. And I'd like to think that maybe I've helped people by whispering those words from the wings, because I think that is, if I had one word to describe this congregation, it would be open. We have opened our doors, we have opened our hearts, and we stay open to the community. So open, and keep doing it because you're awesome at it.
Can you talk about the music ministry?
Oh, so when I came, it was George Bowen, which was really fun, and the Peace Jammers. So we had some music. It was fairly traditional music, but George had a good choir, and it was pretty traditional. We have had so many people in that music position. I think of Shulamit, who came from Israel, and Mary Martin really mentored her, and she was a classically trained pianist. So we had amazing music then, but we also had many students from UMD, and then we found Jim Pospisil, who came as our accompanist, and then George retired, and he became our music director. And Jim and I worked together for 27 years, and we're able to play well together, I think, because Jim is so creative, but I gave him lines to color in. So we used a lot of local musicians, because I was you go out and there's so many amazing musicians in this community. I'm like, they're playing in the bars, but no one's really listening. They're not getting paid a lot. I'm like, you want to play at Peace Church? I've got a really good music director who will work with you, and you'll have 200 people listening, and we'll pay you. And so we have had so many great musicians over the years. And so the music is eclectic and moving and adds so much to worship in the worship life of the church. Because it is like Augustine said, to sing is to pray twice. So we sing loud. So COVID was hard. I think that was a really hard time in the life of the congregation because we couldn't gather, let alone sing together. But what I'm proud of is that we pivoted quickly. We stayed open. With the help of Doug Bowen-Bailey and Alex Dean and Tim Carpenter, we never missed a Sunday. And we kept it in our space, which I think was really important, that people saw that there were still people in the space, even when they couldn't be in the space. Sharon Dawson was amazing. She created the cardboard kids, which were placeholders for our kids, and she would decorate them each Sunday to fit what the theme was for that Sunday. And so we kept ourselves going. We stayed open, and open in so many ways. I think of Pamela Middlefeld and the letter writing that so many people did to our frontline workers. And that meant a lot to people, to our nurses, our teachers, to get letters saying, your congregation is praying for you, thinking of you, because it was dark. COVID was really, really hard on all our souls. I think it has permanently left a mark on the church, and I don't think we know what that will be. But I was glad I was here, at least for the beginning. I had announced my retirement long before COVID, and then COVID happened. So at least I was here for the beginning as we tried to figure this out with the leadership, so much great leadership as we tried to navigate really difficult waters. But we stayed open, and so I'd say open is the word for Peace Church.
You had some stories when you come back to preach about some of the happenings of church that had to do with women or youth. Can you just tell us a couple of those?
Sure. Well, I always remember, and I've told this so many times, but I still love it. Trudy Schwert, who was on the search committee, my first week here at Peace Church came in with a green green recipe box, metal recipe box, and in it she had 5 recipe cards, but every person in the congregation, the name of every person, their family, how they were involved in the church, and she's like, you need to know these people. And we went through the recipe box together. We went through it, and she told me about everyone, because she had held every position in the church, so she knew. And every time a new person joined, she'd hand me a new recipe card. And so for me, that was really important, is that these are our people, and I need to know who they are and something about their story. And she taught me that. She was my Eli, and so I think of that. So many amazing people who have gone before this congregation, Harold and Helva Paschke, and the church picnic used to be out at their house, out at their lake cabin on Caribou Lake, way far out, and then it moved to the Gazeys, Dick and Linda. Dick's been treasurer forever, and just really such Linda with all her work in Chum, just so many amazing people in the life of this church that have generations. The Cadles, Bill would come, Bill Cadle, 8 generations of Cadles in this congregation. I used to visit his dad back when he would be at Lakeshore Lutheran, and he had laughed because I would always call and make an appointment, and I found out later the family thought that was so funny that I would call the nursing home, but I was like, oh no, he's a man of dignity. I need to make sure it's okay if I come visit. He had great stories too, Bill's dad, and so Bill and Barb Cadle and just all the Cadles. Bill would come to confirmation and tell the stories of the church along with Joan Severson, and Bill always brought his chocolate chip cookies. He had the best chocolate chip cookies ever, and he told us that his secret was oleo. He didn't use margarine. He didn't use butter, he used margarine. And so all those cookies, Mary Martin and all her work painting the church, just rehabbing the church. And when Mary died, she was very specific. She planned her whole funeral beforehand, and she was like, I want dancing, I want these songs, and I want a fire. And I'm like, Mary, how am I going to get you a fire? Well, it just happened the Saturday before her service. Her service was on a Sunday. We were supposed to burn the the Memorial Prairie to help it grow, but it rained, so we couldn't. So right after the service, we went and burned the prairie in honor of Mary. I'm like, oh, Mary, you got your wish, because she was a big part of helping the Bowen Baileys create that, because she said, no, we should do she was on the council at that point and said we should do the whole prairie because grief is such a part of life. So there's so many people who have done so much. Just the remodel of the space. We had 6 architects in the church who helped think about this, and then we knew we couldn't pick an architect from the church, so we used an outside, but they had so much information as they did that. And I think Marcia and Gail, who picked the color scheme, which when they were putting it on, I was like, what? But it's perfect. And we face the lake, we face east. So this space is just, I'd come and sit here a lot. It's just such a beautiful space. And I know other people come and just sit in the quiet, healing space of this place. And it stays open.
What did this mean to you and your family, part of the church?
We were really taken in. I just think this was a great place for our girls. So we never expected to stay 30 years. It's like, usually 8 is on the outside, But it was such a great place to raise. There were so many kids, so I think our kids sort of blended in. They never felt like they were PKs because there were so many kids, so they just sort of blended in to all the other kids. Except I always remember when Maddie was little, she would always sit in the front pew, and then right after the benediction, she would come up and grab my hand and walk out with me. And it was her way of saying, she might be your pastor, but now she's my mom. And so they loved growing up here. I think it's in some ways it's been hard with my retirement because this was their faith community. And so now they're needing to discover another place. But it's hard to find a place like Peace. So it's been a really interesting journey for them and for us too. So it was a great place to raise our kids. So, and for Tim too, he found his place here. He served. He loved being part of the choir, doing the tech. I just have to give a little promo. He's the one who got us the website peaceucc.org, because he knew a long time before others that the web was going to be a really big deal. So he got us the website. Cindy McLean did a lot of work on it too, but he got the domain name. So
not to interject, but I just was thinking about that the other day when I went online. I'm like, how do we get peaceucc.org?
Tim.
There are PCUCCs all
over the country, because when the United Church of Christ was formed in 1957, most of the ENR churches changed their names, and many of them took Peace as their name. So Tim did that over 30 years ago, got that domain name. So that was Tim. He's a techie. So, and he continued to work on the church computers and the technology for a long time in the life of the church, which was so important, I think, and is becoming, as now we see, increasingly, it's vital, like during COVID, and as a way of people to stay in touch with each other.
When you said PK, one of your lasting that the congregation did in your name was
the PK Fund, yeah. Well, and the PK Fund, because the Cadles always called me PK because it was Pastor Kathy, so I was thinking of pastor's kids, but in some ways that totally fits because all the kids are my kids. So the PK Fund is prioritize kids, because I think that's something this congregation has always done, is prioritize kids. And so keep prioritizing the kids, because I always felt like if I know someone's kid's name, that's going to mean a lot. So I always made sure I knew people's children's names, because I know for me, I love when people know my kid's name and know something about my kids. And so I think that prioritizing the kids, and we've always done that with the emphasis on the youth program, making sure those work camps are affordable, because I think too often people can't. And we were able to do that with all the fundraising efforts, and I'm hoping the PK Fund makes the bus a no-brainer, because that bus is so much safer. At first we were driving, I was thinking about that. Jim McLean and I drove to San Antonio and back in a van. I was like, I would never do that again. So having the bus makes it safe for our kids to do those work camps. And so hopefully the PK Fund will do that. But I'm so glad you're using some of the money for the David Hogg event, because that is prioritizing kids and keeping kids safe. So I think the PK Fund is really about kid programming, and whatever you all think that is about prioritizing our kids. So,
have any of the kids come back as adults and told you that maybe their life is different because of coming here?
They have, in some ways. I think getting to do weddings for kids that I had in confirmation is really fun. And I will always think, one young woman who I did her wedding to her partner, she said she grew up here at Peace Church with 2 moms, and she knew it was the one place she didn't feel weird, because there were other families with 2 moms. And then when she came out and I got to do her wedding, it was fabulous, because it was, again, a safe place. So I think being that place of openness where our kids could truly be who they are. There's been some real painful moments in the life of the church with some of our kids. I think the death of Greg Nugent will forever impact us, in that their kids are impulsive and bullying needs to be taken very seriously. But a lot of our kids got involved in the safe school stuff and anti-bullying work at East High School. Kids need someone to care. They just really do. And I think the church can be that place where they feel listened to and heard and loved. Open.
I was just going to say, tell us your word one more time.
Open.
You can have one more.
One more word for the Peace Church is open. Yeah, I think that's what you've been, continue to be, open. Think of Jesus when he healed the man who was mute. He said, be open, and you are. We're not silent, that's for sure. So stay speaking. The God is still speaking, and you are a megaphone.